of those who are most impacted by the climate catastrophes we are all witnessing in real time. KBLA delegation, we hope to see you this Friday morning at KBLA Talk 1580. Climate is king. Climate is king. Climate is king. Climate is king. Climate is king.
And the beat goes on. We have found ourselves in our third and final hour today, so the beat has gone on for a couple hours, and now we get a chance to wrap an amazing show today with an amazing conversation. I am delighted in this hour to have a career conversation with Emmy-winning journalist and documentarian Soledad O'Brien, as promised, about her latest piece on affirmative action and her ongoing work shedding light on untold stories and challenging societal norms through compelling storytelling. Soledad's name has come up 2 or 3 times already in the show today, in part because in our first hour, my regular contributor, Ruben Navarrete Jr., whose politics ain't my politics, but we've been friends for 30-plus years and love to argue about things. He and Soledad were in the same class at Harvard. And then we talked about Bill Ackman earlier today. He was at Harvard around the same time that Soledad was there. And we talked about presidential politics, and I mentioned to you that Soledad and I, some years ago, moderated a presidential forum together in Iowa. The Iowa caucuses are on Monday, kicking off the season in earnest to elect a president in November. So her name has popped up a few times already on this program. She should know. And so now she's actually here in person. Before we commence our conversation with Soledad for the hour, take a listen to a piece from her new work, and we'll let her tell us about it when we come forward.
I think there are people who would say, so affirmative action is a way for people of color who are not qualified to get into jobs or maybe schools.
Even during the trials, there was zero evidence that any of those students should not have gotten in on their own talents.
Until 1976, the numbers of students of color in colleges were so low, the U.S. government didn't even count them. Today, schools are more diverse, but numbers are still low at the top colleges, the ones that admit less than 25% of their applicants, and produce a quarter of the U.S. Senate, 3/4 of the Supreme Court justices, and the majority of the nation's Fortune 500 CEOs. Even with affirmative action in play, just 7% of students at top colleges are Black, even though twice that many, 14%, are of college age. 15% are Latino, even though their college-age population is 23.4%, the fastest-growing youth demographic in the U.S. McKinsey research on nonprofit colleges found that even with affirmative action, it would take almost 70 years for these institutions' student bodies to reflect the demographics of the U.S. population in terms of the number of historically underrepresented students in each class.
We have so much history behind us as people of color, so much history, like such a strong past. So why would we be put at the same level as somebody whose family has been here for centuries and have benefited off of the harm done to communities of color?
Soledad O'Brien, my first time talking to you in the new year, so Happy New Year to you. How have you been?
Hey, thank you. Likewise. Happy New Year to you. I've been really, really well. How about you?
I can't complain. If I complained, I'd be an ingrate. I am doing well, and always delighted to be in conversation with you. As I said earlier,
Thank
you've
you.
had quite the career. We're going to have a career conversation in this hour about all the stuff you have done and are doing, but I want to start, obviously, with this new piece. Tell me about this affirmative action work you've done.
Yeah, we were really interested in exploring the kind of, what now? The thing I think is so interesting, and you've actually covered this for many years, there's so many mythologies, right, around affirmative action, around minorities in general, but around affirmative action. Affirmative action is wildly successful, so successful that Black students are overtaking, and students of color generally are overtaking white students who just struggle to get into school, right? That is just not true. But if you were to run down the street and ask random people, I think there's all this mythology around, this idea of replacement. And so we were very interested in sort of tackling some of this mythology, but also really saying, okay, now that the Supreme Court has basically killed affirmative action, what now? What does it mean for students? So we were able to talk to students who in some ways were very interesting because they sat in this dividing line. The older sister had applied and gotten into college under affirmative action. And then when the younger sister was applying, affirmative action was now dead. And so what were her challenges? What were her strategies? And what happened to her was kind of one of the groups of students that we talked to, and also talking to people who are trying to figure out, okay, how do you then assist students in an environment where there is very clearly an attack, not just on affirmative action. It's really the start, I would say, and I think there's a ton of evidence for saying, on DEI generally, right? This idea of just an out-and-out attack on diversity. So affirmative action in many ways, with Edward Blum at the helm, is just the start of trying to kill DEI and diversity initiatives that have benefited people who have historically been left behind for lots of reasons. And so I think we're at the beginning of that as well. So that's what we wanted to explore in this documentary.
Yeah, it's a great piece of work, and I'm glad you did it. Let me start by asking what you discovered. Well, let me do this too. I'm looking at my clock here. Let me frame this, and we'll give you a chance to respond when we come forward here, Soledad. What I want to ask in a moment is what did you discover in your work, in your research for this documentary that has allowed this mythology, as you put it, about affirmative action, not just to be sustained, but to succeed so well the Supreme Court buys this argument and guts affirmative action? What's been driving, what's been allowing for, creating the terrain that could allow this mythology to grow and to grow so wildly that we ultimately end up just doing away with it, just chopping it down altogether? That's our question for Soledad O'Brien. That and more when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
Interrogating and unpacking. That's what we do around here. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
What is dedication?
My biggest fear in the middle of my addiction was that my kids wouldn't have a father. And I started thinking, you know what? This isn't my story. I definitely had to become a better man to be a better father. It's important to me that my kids are empowered and truly believe that if they can think it, they can do it.
That's dedication. Visit fatherhood.gov to hear more. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Joey from Vermont, a farmer trying to get through the winter. Adriana from South Carolina, a single mother living paycheck to paycheck. Liam from Ohio, an injured father struggling to provide for his family. Hi, I'm Shanola Hampton, and I support the Feeding America network of food banks because they help provide over 6 billion meals to people in need each year. Learn more at feedingamerica.org.
In Big Tobacco's Fantasyland, children are the future. Here, tobacco companies are committed to higher education, offering scholarships to students who submit essays about the benefits of vaping. The tobacco industry even sponsors summer camps for kids. Don't worry, the tobacco-sponsored programs have been linked to leaving your kids more interested in smoking. In Big Tobacco's Fantasyland, the world's deadliest industry is your child's friend.
See reality at undo.org.
We're for Washington. We love Febrez's new scent. Refresh and energize.
So much we made a song about it. this feeling inside. Breathe, breath, and energize. It's a mood, it's a vibe. Breathing for the first time. So free, so alive. Breathe happy for breathe. Smells like paradise. Breathe happy for breathe. La, 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 la.
For all of us, this generation and the next, there is simply no place in our lives for litter. And yet, it's everywhere we look. And unfortunately, it does belong to all of us. So, let's come together and create a litter-free, clean California, once and for all. Remember to properly dispose of your trash and recycling. Secure truckloads with tarps to keep debris from flying out. Clean out your car when you're at a gas station. Take pride in your community by organizing a cleanup event. Or join a cleanup event near you. Zero litter is the goal. Join us at cleanca.com. That's cleanca.com. Let's do it together. Brought to you by Caltrans. cleanca.com.
Let's get back to more of this rich dialogue with Tavis Smiley.
Tavis Smiley and Soledad O'Brien has a powerful documentary out about affirmative action. Soledad, when, where, and how can people see the doc?
The doc is streaming on CBS.com, and actually I think a really good way to check it out is to go to the CBS News app, or Paramount Plus as well are very good opportunities to check it out. And it's a short doc. It's a 30-minute doc. Most of my docs are what we call TV hours, but I think it's a really full of just lots of information and lots of context.
So what has allowed this mythology to not just be sustained over many, many years? I was just talking to one of our guests earlier today, going back to Abigail Fisher, you recall, University of Texas, and all the ways in which we were talking in the prior hour about the ways in which they started at that time using King's words, Dr. King's words, to make their own case that he'd be opposed to corrective programs like affirmative action, because he wanted folk to be judged by the content of their character rather than the color of their skin, all that nonsense. We spent an hour sort of talking about the way in which the right, political right, is using King's words to make their own points, their own claims toward their own ends and aims. That was last hour. So here we are now talking to you specifically about affirmative action in this particular hour. And I'm curious as to what you've learned about the ways in which this mythology has been allowed not just to be sustained, but to succeed to the point where the Supreme Court has now, to your point, killed it.
Yeah, I think there's 4 answers to that. And
Okay.
some of them come off the conversation in the last hour, right? Which is people want to believe these things that just aren't true. There are plenty of Americans, we see this in polls all the time, who believe that white Americans are actually more the victims of racism than black Americans. And I think, and people who believe that reverse racism is actually a thing. And so I think playing into Dr. King's words, character, not skin color, even as you twist it, and really don't understand anything about the man at all, right, as a very convincing argument for some people. Number 2, I think there's this sense of selling something that actually hasn't worked. Affirmative action really has not worked very well. And you started your entire third hour by talking about how, it's moving so slowly that to actually get to parity would take a very, very, very long time. So there's this mythology that people want to embrace that not only is it working, it's working super, super well. It's actually not really been working. If anything, it's working very, 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 very slowly. And then I think there's this idea of, well, racism is dead. And certainly for middle-class black Americans, racism is really, it just doesn't exist. And I think the Supreme Court has tried to underscore that many times. There are many examples of that, and it's just not true. There's tons of evidence that shows, whether it's in selling your house or getting access to jobs or whatever, long list, you covered this on your show all the time, that racism is alive and very much well here in the United States. So I think those are some of the reasons. And I think overall, really, you have this idea that people really don't like affirmative action in the package of people of color, if it's in the package of legacies, well, my daddy built the library at this school, or it's in the package of, well, I'm a really good athlete, I deserve to get access because of this thing, then people are much more comfortable with it. They don't even think of it as affirmative action, right? They actually don't even call that affirmative action when in fact it is affirmative action. And so I always ask people, like, why does it make you so uncomfortable on this piece of it? But over here, when it's legacies getting access, you actually don't have a problem with that at all. And often I think people struggle to answer that. So I think those are the many reasons why, this challenge and this mythology is so easily embraced.
To your point, people struggle to answer that latter part about the legacies. What's the best answer? I'm putting best in air quotes. What's the best retort you've heard to that question?
I think sometimes people will say, well, sports is something that, is a skill that you're bringing. And if your dad builds a library, well, then he's adding value. So that's a good thing. I mean, it usually peters off into a very messy conversation because I don't think there really is a reason. One of the things we found in the doc, Tavis, which I think was really disturbing for people, was to understand that students from the richest 1% of American families are twice as likely to attend the nation's most elite private colleges. And people would say, okay, that makes sense. They've gone to good schools, they've gotten good grades, they are just better qualified. And you say, oh, no. No, even if their grades are the same as middle class students, even if their grades are worse than middle class students, they are more likely to attend. And there's a host of reasons for that. We know, for example, 40% of students now are admitted early decision. Well, and I have two boys who are going through the college process right now, which is its own little circle of hell, let me tell you. But when you decide to do early decision, you say, no matter what it costs, I'm going to go there. Well, there's only certain people who can agree to do that. So we know that there are a host of reasons why those experiences exist. And for some reason, people are just not uncomfortable and don't see that as particularly unfair. But at the end of the day, and you mentioned this coming into this conversation, people will take a really interesting argument and twist it and spin it. And this is all the start of a conservative effort, a conservative movement to eliminate race-based programs that encourage diversity. It is an effort to stomp out diversity, period, full stop.
I want to ask you about that in a second. First of all, I'm thinking of your comment about your two boys, and two thoughts come to mind. One, I've seen those two boys behind the scenes help you on the work that you do running your company. So you about to lose 2 employees. Number one, it sounds like that. And number two, I'm pushing you to the top of my prayer list with 2 kids going through the college process at one time. So there's that. That said. Tell me more about the way in which you see it. I'm glad you put your finger on this a couple times now. Tell about the ways in which you see this attack on affirmative action as a means to an end to destroy anything that has race connected to it, as a means to an end to destroy anything diversity, equity, inclusion related. This is strategic, or as George Bush might say, there's some strategery involved here. So tell me, lots of strategic.
Lots and lots.
Tell me about the strategery that you see involved in this attack.
Yeah, absolutely. And because you can tell there's lots of strategery because, in fact, we have seen pretty much right after the Supreme Court decision, a letter was sent out, right, to law firms telling those law firms to advise their clients, hang on to your documents about your programs, your diversity programs, the law firms themselves and the clients of the law firms. And I'm not a lawyer, but boy, do I know if anybody ever tells you, hey, hold on to those documents, it's generally an indication that you can expect there's going to be some kind of legal fight to come. And so it's obviously extremely, extremely intentional about the strategy there. And of course, we've already seen in many states, you've got efforts to kill DEI. I'm currently in the state of Florida, and we've already seen efforts to remove the history of African Americans from public school curriculum and book banning. These are all might feel like these individual pieces, but in fact, they're not individual pieces of a strategy. It's a really well-honed and very long strategy. Edward Bloom has been at this for a long time.
Yeah.
He's not a guy who just suddenly 2 years ago decided, hey, I should bring this before the Supreme Court. This has been very, very intentional. And in a lot of ways, I think even the arguments, and the arguments are laid out very clearly. One thing that I think conservatives are doing, they're very clear about, if you look at Claudine Gay as a good example. I mean, people say, they lay out, here's what we're going to do.
Mm-hmm.
Here is our plan.
Mm-hmm.
It's not some top secret thing that I can tell you that I have discovered by deep research.
Mm-hmm.
People say it in interviews, here's what the plan is. And so, I can tell you that Bill Ackman right now is trying to get himself elected and a slate to the Harvard Board of Overseers. I know because he's been reaching out with other people that I know, asking some people to join that slate so that they can take over the Harvard Board of Overseers. I don't know if anybody knows that officially, but I can promise you that is accurate. And so it's not surprising, right? It's a very intentional strategy. And I think when you approach these things with an intentional strategy, Fearless Fund, you've talked about that, with an attack on Fearless Fund and other DEI programs, other diversity programs across the board, they're not just one-offs. And you have to understand that a lot of these universities and colleges right now are absolutely, panicking is probably too strong, but are very, very stressed and very aware about the position that they are in. They fully understand that they're in a position where they're a defensive position.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the best way to put it. They're in a defensive position right now. And so, they don't actually have to say why they've admitted students. Our producing partner in this documentary, the Hechinger Report, reached out to 40 of the most selected colleges and said, tell us the race of the students you admitted. Tell us the race of the students who applied. 40 of those 40, only fewer than half actually answered. And of the half that even responded, they actually didn't answer with any information. They just responded because they don't want to, and they don't really necessarily see it as an upside. The Harvard Dean of Admissions has said, to the Harvard Crimson, admissions officers aren't even going to have access to data on race. Why? They're trying to position themselves legally in a particular way.
Yeah. You've described quite brilliantly and quite accurately the political playbook that we see rolling out in front of our eyes. We see the frame that we are in when it comes to conservatives and anything that has race attached to it. You mentioned that you're in Florida, which makes me want to ask your view of how you see not just their playbook writ large, but how you see in this presidential race, given that you're in Florida, home of Ron DeSantis, et cetera, how do you see this whole notion of racial preference? You can't see me, I'm using air quotes right now, but racial preference programs, in air quotes. How do you see that playing itself out on the stump this year, given that we expect that Donald Trump is the presumptive Republican nominee?
Yeah, I think you see a lot of the candidates kind of circle around it, right? They want to, there was a great quote that actually Charles Blow highlighted from Nikki Haley in one of the debates, right? Where she basically sort of highlights Black women, right? And kind of undercuts them and undermines them. And I think you're going to see that consistently. People understand, and I think I have always hated when media calls this culture wars because often it's not, culture war almost makes it sound like I like strawberry ice cream, you like chocolate ice cream. We just don't agree on this. When actually you're talking about things that are very serious and historically relevant and factually are something we should dig into. They're not just these culture wars where people just don't see eye to eye. We're not going to debate people's ability to be considered human beings, right? I mean, but that sometimes is considered a culture war. So I think you're going to see it really insert itself because I think it is definitely an issue, one that the press will run after, very much so, and give a lot of time to, and even elevate those people. There was a time back in the day, and I'm dating myself, when if you spoke like you were a member of the KKK or you were in fact a member of the KKK, you might not get a ton of airtime, or at least there'd be an editorial meeting discussing like how do we actually report on this person without just giving them an open mic. And I think the 2016 election was a really good example of reporters not having a freaking clue as to how to strategize and figure out, how do you manage someone who just speaks in mistruths and out and out fabrications and misinformation and disinformation. And I can't say that reporters really learn. So it's definitely going to show up in the election for sure. And I think we're going to be even more shocked just because I have found every year more and more shocking.
Yeah, let me ask you this question with 2 minutes to go in this moment, and when we come forward, have some other stuff I want to talk to you about. But I want to just put a nice little bow on this if I can. With regard to affirmative action in higher education, let me ask that Kingian question: where do we go from here?
It's a great question. I don't think we're going to really know because no one is now required to track this data. The students that we profile in our documentary, right, there's no clear indication of why they got in or why they didn't get into school. And as you know, applying to colleges, essays and extracurriculars and grades and recommendations, right? It's this complicated mess. So it is often very, very hard. And these selective colleges, and all colleges actually, don't really have a requirement now to tell the public. And I think because of that, it's going to just be very complicated. But I do think it's clear we're at a beginning of efforts to really turn back progress and really undermine diversity in this country. And I think a lot of people are asleep at the wheel if they believe it's not intentional, it's not coordinated, it's not organized, and it's not going to cost a lot of money that a lot of people are very willing to fund.
So that's the part that I wanted to start with about her powerful documentary about affirmative action. When we come forward, as I promised, a career conversation. Soledad has been quite diligent and quite fortunate and quite intentional about crafting what I would consider and call an enviable career. I don't know too many people of color who would not want to have had the career that Soledad has and is continuing to grow with her own production company, Soledad Productions. There's a lot to talk to this sister about with regard to her career, and I've got some questions for her in that regard. Brace yourself, Soledad. Just teasing. More of Soledad O'Brien when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
For all the freedom-loving folk, this is Tavis Smiley.
I feel like freedom.
If you're like me, 60 and retired, making ends meet, especially here at the supermarket and drugstore, is tough. I'm so blessed to have found benefitscheckup.org. It's a free and confidential website from the National Council on Aging that connected me to $1,200 a year in programs that help pay for food, medicine, utilities, and more. Maybe it can help you. benefitscheckup.org.
My daughter was diagnosed with a rare malignant rhabdoid tumor on the spine. They sent her straight to St. Jude. My hope was gone. But when you get there, everyone's like, hey, we're not going to give up. And when you see other people not giving up on your child, that makes all the difference in the world. When I found out I didn't have to pay, I was just grateful. They saved my baby's life.
Finding cures, saving children. Learn more at stjude.org.
I'm Mike Moore. Here's the latest from the Black Information Network. A North Carolina man who was wrongfully accused of a rape is going to receive a massive settlement. Ronnie Long spent more than 4 decades in prison before his conviction was overturned in 2020. One of his attorneys revealed this week that the African-American man will receive at least $25 million from the North Carolina State Bureau of Investigation and the City of Concord as part of a settlement in a civil suit. We're now learning the TSA has set a new record when it comes to finding guns in carry-on bags. 2 of the top 5 airports for gun seizures were in Texas. Dallas and Houston were behind only Atlanta when it came to arrests. More than 9 out of 10 of the guns seized were loaded. And that's the latest. I'm Mike Moore from your 24/7 news source, the Black Information Network and BINnews.com.
Did you know Discover wants everyone to feel special? That's why with your Discover card, you have access to 24/7 customer service, as well as $0 fraud liability, which means you're never held responsible for unauthorized purchases. Learn more at discover.com/credit card. Limitations apply.
This is the The KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The Clippers got 29 points each from Paul George and Kawhi Leonard last night to hold off Toronto. George scored 15 of his points in the fourth quarter. The Clippers are 11 games over 500 and are 14-3 since December 1st. Earlier Wednesday, the Clippers signed Kawhi to a 3-year extension worth $153 million. The deal will pay Kawhi an average salary of $51 million. The Lakers are at home tonight against Phoenix, 7 p.m. tip-off on TNT. USC's men's basketball team lost at home last night to Washington State. The Trojans lost by 8. USC freshman Bronny James was scoreless in 15 minutes off the bench. LeBron's son was 0 for 3 from the floor and finished with 1 assist and a turnover. Seattle became the 5th NFL team looking for a new head coach. Pete Carroll was fired Wednesday. The former USC head coach had been with Seattle for 14 years. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
Race, culture wars, political turf battles, criminal justice, and injustice. The courts. These are the conversations you won't hear elsewhere. My guests are leading journalists, celebrities, and sports figures, elected leaders, and influencers. They aren't afraid to get into it and say the quiet part out loud. With Ariva Martin in real time, your commute just became the most engaging part of your day. Tune in weekdays from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. or find us on YouTube. Ariva Martin in real time, when you want it straight, no chaser.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black. This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
Right now, there are young people across the world facing a tough choice. Continue their dream of education or drop out to help their family put food on the table. You can help change their future in a single moment. See how far your support can go at unbound.org.
Granddad, what's good? Hey there, got us a quarter pounder with cheese and McNuggets. Wow, haven't had our special McDonald's order in a minute. Heard your little tic-tac-toe dance didn't get no likes. Oh man, is Mom telling everybody? You know she is.
There's a deal for every favorite grandson at McDonald's. Right now, get one favorite like a quarter pounder with cheese or 10-piece chicken McNuggets and get another for just $1. Price and participation may vary. Cannot be combined with any other offer. Valid for item of equal or lesser value.
Did you know that feeling sluggish or weighed down could be a sign that your digestive system isn't working at its best? Taking Metamucil every day can help. Metamucil fiber powders help promote your daily digestive health using a plant-based fiber called psyllium. The gelling action of this special fiber traps and removes waste so you can feel lighter and more energetic. Metamucil, promoting digestive health for a better you. Learn more at metamucil.com. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. These products are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. Girl, I have a secret. When I get stressed out, I get sweaty. That's why I use Secret Clinical Antiperspirant. It's like my own secret weapon. For 72 hours, I get Secret's strongest protection against sweat caused by stress, heat, and activity, because you know how crazy life can get. Plus, it's made with advanced odor fighters that don't just cover up smelliness. They help prevent it from happening in the first place. Believe me, if I weren't wearing Secret, I'd be a hot, smelly mess. Thankfully, Secret works.
The thing no one tells you about periods is that your flow changes every day, and so should your tampon size. Tampax has 5 absorbencies to match your changing flow. If it hurts to remove, go down a size. If it leaks, go up a size. Only Tampax has a leak guard braid to help give you up to 100% leak and odor-free protection. All-day comfort and protection for under $5 a month. Based on average U.S. consumer usage at manufacturer's suggested price. However, pricing is at the sole discretion of the retailer. Excludes 8-count pack.
Sounds different, huh? This is Tavis Smiley.
This is Tavis Smiley with Soledad O'Brien, and Soledad knows how this works. She's done it for years. There's some breaking news here that I want to have to share with you right quick, and I want to get Soledad's take on it, and then we'll continue talking about the fine career that she has crafted for herself. So, headline for the New York Times, Trump's civil fraud trial coming to an end. Trump delivers the final words in his closing argument in the fraud trial just moments ago. I quote now from the New York Times. Trump's months-long fraud trial draws to an end. Here is the latest. Donald J. Trump on Thursday delivered abrupt remarks in his own defense on the final day of his civil fraud trial in Manhattan, attacking the New York Attorney General who brought the case and insulting the judge to his face and declaring himself an innocent man. Mr. Trump's remarks were chaotic and emotional and lasted only minutes, during which he impugned the Attorney General, Letitia James, a Democrat, saying that she hates Trump and uses Trump to get elected. That's a quote. He also took aim at the judge, remarking to the judge to his face, "You have your own agenda." I certainly understand that. He added as the judge stared stonily at him, "You can't listen for more than 1 minute." This is Trump talking to the judge. "You can't listen for more than 1 minute." The judge jumped in immediately and instructed the president's lawyers to control your client. Donald Trump continued, nonetheless, until the lunch break. That from, with a little Tavis commentary, that from the New York Times. Soledad, I don't know what to say, but your thoughts about that breaking news that Trump spoke today. And you recall that a week or so ago when his lawyers asked or raised the issue that he might say a few words before this trial closed, the judge made it abundantly clear. If he speaks, you can't attack the Attorney General, you can't attack me, you can't attack my staff, and that's exactly what he just did moments ago, Soledad.
Yeah, an insult-filled rant is not exactly a surprise to me or anybody from Donald Trump. I mean, the guy, it's so interesting to me that he gets a zillion chances. Like, you cannot do it, and everyone knows, all of us know full well that he's going to do that. That civil fraud trial, of course, is based on the concept that he overvalued his properties in order to get those favorable terms from banks. And of course, listen, if he loses this, massive, multi-$100 million fine that he's facing, could be banned from real estate, the industry as a whole for life. Couldn't serve, I think, as a director of any corporation as well. So there's some very big risks here. But yeah, there's, again, nothing in that trial has surprised me. And especially when judges warn him not to do something, I think pretty consistently he goes ahead and does it. So I'm really not surprised on that front at all.
Yeah, only a white guy can get away with that. To tell the judge that you can't listen for more than a minute. You got your own agenda here. And all the judge says is, please control your client. If that had been a Negro telling the judge to his face, you can't listen for more than a minute. You got your own agenda here. They would have ran that Negro out of that courtroom, and all that Donald Trump gets is, please control your client. And then he continued until the lunch break. So to your point, all the chances that he gets, don't get me started on that. Let me just ask you, though, nice segue here. I've seen and followed you, of course. I've seen a number of your critiques legitimate and informed, given the role that you've played in the media for decades now. How do you read the way the media has struggled? That's my word, not yours. The media has struggled, or just rolled over, as it were, in covering Donald Trump heretofore, and how you expect they're going to do a better job, to the extent they can or will, covering him forward between now and November.
Yeah, I think rolled over is a really good phrase. And probably a couple of years ago, I would have been like, yeah, struggled is a good word. But, I think when people refuse to do any kind of analysis of their failures and their mistakes, then it really is a matter of rolling over, because it means it's more intentional than the struggle that I probably originally gave the media credit for doing. So I don't see any growth. I don't see any learning. I don't see any ability to say, hey, how do you cover a person who is newsworthy, so deserves to be covered, but doesn't necessarily deserve to have a live hot mic handed to him, doesn't necessarily deserve to have an entire town hall centered around, again, we know what he's going to do. If people do not know that, then they really need to remove themselves from the business, because I think everybody else really is well aware of how it's going to go. And the CIA, that's Freudian, CNN debacle of having him in that town hall, right? It went exactly as everyone predicted. It was just a complete raging hot mess. And of course, you can't even argue like, well, there's just tons of good information that comes out, because usually there's not. It's mixed in with lies and disinformation and misinformation. So it's not necessarily valuable, but you do have to come up with a way to cover him, get information, and yet not hand him a live mic. And I've really not seen anybody come up with a strategy to do that well, and I don't have any great hopes, frankly. I wish this weren't the case, but I just haven't seen anything where people are doing a lot of self-analysis, like, wow, how do we do this better?
Yeah.
So I'm not feeling very optimistic about good coverage, to be honest.
And what's your, obviously you have an indictment. What is your indictment of the way that this happens perennially? And by this, I mean the way that we have not learned lessons from the first time around. Like, I mean, these are news organizations who ought to know better. And I can just leave it at that and let you respond. But what's your sense of why? My grandmother, Big Mama, put it this way: baby, when you know better, you ought to do better. When you know better, you ought to do better. So they know better. So I'm not naive in asking this. Why aren't they doing better?
I'm going to argue we're measuring the wrong thing. Here's what they know.
Okay.
Money, they know ratings, they know buzz, they know, right? So this idea of we're doing something that is not good journalism, I think that falls down to like number 20 thing on the list.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't think it's first. It's, how will we do ratings? Are we getting buzz? Are people talking about it? Is it traveling on social? Did he say something crazy? Can we take that chunk and then push it forward, and then it drives the news for the next day or two, right? Those are all really important elements of how those stories flow. It's not just looking back and saying, are we proud of ourselves for doing this? Or are we not proud of ourselves? It really, I think it's naive to think that they think that way. They really don't. It is a money question. I hate to say, I love journalism so much. So, but I fully understand when people are like, listen, at the end of the day, this has got to make money. And here's a person who can drive eyeballs and can drive conversation, and people will hate watch as much as they'll love watch. And we can really mobilize these, terrible things that he does for certain populations that are watching, and amazing things that he's doing for other populations. So I think the question about journalism is honestly like way down on the list.
Yeah. As you were talking, I'm thinking, and this is my sense of it, that all of our systems have bowed down to Donald Trump. All of our systems genuflect in the face of Donald Trump. Our political system certainly does that. Republicans lining up all these sycophants. Our media does that. That's what Soledad was just talking about it. The judicial system does that. Today, you can diss a judge to his face, and all the judge says is control your client. Everybody handles this guy with kid gloves. We all sort of bow down, and that's an indictment, I think, of all of our systems, from the judicial system, as I said, to our corporate media, to our political system. It's unnerving, for lack of a better word, to just watch this genuflection in real time. I digress on that. More with Soledad O'Brien when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
From Lamert Park with love, this is Tavis Smiley.
What is dedication?
My biggest fear in the middle of my addiction was that my kids wouldn't have a father. And I started thinking, you know what? This isn't my story. I definitely had to become a better man to be a better father. It's important to me that my kids are empowered and truly believe that if they can think it, they can do it.
That's dedication. Visit fatherhood.gov to hear more. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Joey from Vermont, a farmer trying to get through the winter. Adriana from South Carolina, a single mother living paycheck to paycheck. Liam from Ohio, an injured father struggling to provide for his family. Hi, I'm Shanola Hampton, and I support the Feeding America network of food banks because they help provide over 6 billion meals to people in need each year. Learn more at feedingamerica.org.
So, what are you doing this Friday morning? How about you come join the KBLA delegation as we make a historic announcement and unveil our climate justice campaign for 2024. We'll be assembled for this major press conference along with LA Mayor Karen Bass, Ben Jealous, Executive Director of the Sierra Club, and a host of other public and private leaders who are joining us on this journey to justice, climate justice. We can't think of a better way to kick off the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. holiday weekend, linking social justice and climate justice. So, Come join us this Friday morning at 10:30 a.m. at the beautiful MLK Memorial Tree Grove at the top of Kenneth Hahn Park off La Cienega. Once again, that's this Friday morning, January 12th at 10:30 a.m. as we take on the task of elevating the climate conversation by amplifying the voices of those who are most impacted by the climate catastrophes we are all witnessing in real time. KBLA delegation, we hope to see you this Friday morning at KBLA Talk 1580. Climate is king. Climate is king. Climate is king. Climate is king. Climate is king.
If you love to travel, Capital One has a rewards credit card that's perfect for you. With Venture X, earn unlimited double miles on everything you buy and turn everyday purchases into extraordinary trips. Plus, receive premium travel benefits like access to over 1,300 airport lounges where you just check in and chill out. Open up a world of possibilities with Capital One. What's in your wallet?
Terms apply. Lounge access is subject to change. See CapitalOne.com for details.
Ready to re-examine your assumptions and expand your inventory of ideas? More of Tavis Smiley coming your way right now.
Soledad O'Brien, what is it like to run Soledad Productions and to be able to address all of these critical issues, to shed light on untold stories and sort of challenge these societal norms through your storytelling from this vantage point versus a network or a corporate standpoint, which you've done at a number of different places over your career?
Well, when you started, I liked the way you made it sound like it was very intentional and very organized and very strategic. I was like, right. Yes, Tavis, it was. Some of the time we really just didn't know what we were doing, but I did have a sense of what I didn't want to do. You know, at the end of the day, you still need clients, you need customers, right? We're always looking for platforms, and so it's not like you just go out there and you just do what you want and put it out there wherever you want. I mean, CBS has been a fantastic partner for us on our documentary about affirmative action. HBO was our partner when we did our Black and Missing series. We did a really great doc that of Rosa Parks, so we always get these partners, and that's obviously essential. But I think what it really does do allows you to, I mean, you know this because in a lot of ways, when you're self-employed, you get to sit down and say, where do I want to spend my time and my energy, and where is my best and highest use of me? And I think, I think that's always a really nice question. I remember when I was working at CNN, I was sent to cover an anniversary of the killing of John Benet Ramsey. And I just remember being in a line with maybe 90 other reporters and just thinking, like, why am I here? I'm not sure I have anything to add value. We're kept so far from the scene. Like, we're just doing live shots. We're not actually reporting, not adding value. And it seems like a little bit of a waste of time, frankly. And so I really vowed to myself after that I wanted to be on stories where me showing up really meant that I could, add some value for the audience. And I've tried to really do that. And, sometimes I feel like, hey, if I weren't there, would this question be asked? If I were not there, would it be framed this way? If I, weren't here, would everybody else push back? And I as you get older too, as you well know, you get what you're willing to do and what you're willing to not do. And so that's kind of been nice as well.
Yep. It may not have been planned, and in many respects, parts of my career weren't planned either, but I have found, and I'm curious to get your take, that there is a particular, how might I put it, there's a particular freedom that comes along with doing the work and witness that you think you were called to do in the way that you know it needs to be done.
Yeah, for sure. There's a freedom when you feel like I think this is with every career, right? When you feel like I am in the place I'm supposed to be, there's a certain sense of calm and like freedom and sense of, even if you're working really hard, you just feel like you're in the right place. And it's very frustrating to toil away when you're pretty sure you're in the wrong place and you're not doing the things that actually are good for you to be doing or that you care deeply about. So I think that's for every career. Through life, and at some point say, what am I supposed to be doing here? Why was I put on the planet? What are my skills and my abilities and my gifts, frankly, that I can add value in some way that maybe somebody else can't?
In our remaining moments with Soledad O'Brien, just about 3 or 4 minutes left when we come forward, I want to ask her, we were just talking a moment ago We both offered our assessment, our indictment, if you will, of the corporate mainstream media as currently structured. But I know there are always young people listening, and those parents who have young people who are in school right now, like the two boys she has on the way to college, who are interested in this media world. And while I don't want to cast aspersion or indict all of our colleagues in the business across the board, that would not be fair. There are a lot of good journalists out there. I am curious as to what Soledad, given the career that she has fashioned, believes is missing. What is missing in the kinds of journalists that we need in the months and years ahead? We'll get her take on that as a veteran these days. You're listening, and I'm glad about it, to Soledad O'Brien on Tavis Smiley.
Unapologetically progressive. Unapologetically black. You're tapped into Tavis Smiley.
If you're like me, 60 and retired, making ends meet, especially here at the supermarket and drugstore, is tough. I'm so blessed to have found benefitscheckup.org. It's a free and confidential website from the National Council on Aging that connected me to $1,200 a year in programs that help pay for food, medicine, utilities, and more. Maybe it can help you. benefitscheckup.org.
My daughter was diagnosed with a rare malignant rhabdoid tumor on the spine. They sent her straight to St. Jude. My hope was gone. But when you get there, everyone's like, hey, we're not going to give up. And when you see other people not giving up on your child, that makes all the difference in the world. When I found out I didn't have to pay, I was just grateful. They saved my baby's life.
Finding cures, saving children. Learn more at stjude.org.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions because we've got your black. Listen up. If you're one of the more than 100,000 California tenants who were rejected or delayed when applying for COVID rental assistance, you've got a second chance. Under the terms of a new settlement, California's Housing and Community Development Department agreed to audit its past denials. The program ended in March 2022, but the advocacy groups Alliance of Californians for Community Empowerment, Policy Link, and Strategic Actions for a Just Economy sued the department. According to the coalition's analysis of state data, the department rejected nearly 30% of all applicants. Under the settlement, the department agreed to clear all renters in the pipeline within 6 months. The settlement applies to anyone who sought assistance from the state's Housing is Key program before April 1st, 2022, whose applications is pending or was denied after June 6, 2022. Tenants who have questions about the status of their application can call the hotline at 833-430-2122. That's 833-430-2122. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Jackson Hewitt has a plan to get your tax refund fast with a buck here, buck there. Here a buck, there a buck, everywhere a buck.
You don't have to wait weeks for your tax refund. Get money sooner with a no-fee refund advance loan at Jackson Hewitt.
On this loan, there's a money today guarantee. E-I-E-I-DO.
Don't settle for chicken feed. Get fast bucks at Jackson Hewitt today. No-fee refund advance loans by Republic Bank offered to eligible clients. Money today guarantee if approved for a loan on a prepaid card. Details at jacksonhewitt.com.
Who do you trust to get at the truth? Tavis Smiley. That's who. The conversation continues right now.
Got about 3 minutes left with Soledad O'Brien. Soledad, I recall two things vividly. The first time some young person called me Mr. Smiley. And the first time somebody introduced me on the show as a veteran broadcast media personality. I hate to break it to you, but we're veterans these days. And because you... I hear the pains. I hear the angst. Because we are veterans, I now get to ask you questions like the following. You've been around long enough now to see what's right, what's wrong, what's working, what doesn't work. I close by asking you today, when it comes to journalism, what it is you see that is missing that these young journalists of color particularly can and ought to be bringing to the table.
And so many of them are. I have to tell you, I'm always amazed and encouraged by young journalists because I think that they understand that their job is to actually bring some kind of sense of understanding to the audience, right? It's about educating people. I don't hate poor people. I don't hate people of color. I don't hate anybody. I'm trying to understand issues. And I think when journalists sort of feel like, well, these people are more valuable than those people, you start getting into trouble. And I see that in older journalists, frankly, far more than I see it in young journalists. So I'm very encouraged by young journalists and the opportunities that lie ahead for them.
Yep. And what's the future of Soledad Productions?
Listen, as you pointed out, we're very organized and strategic. We continue to work on projects that we love. We're looking at, obviously, women's right to choose right now in a project. We're going to do a follow-up to our documentary about affirmative action, looking at the next layer of attack on DEI. So we're just busy. We're a very, very tiny company, but we keep trying to work on things. Our podcast about the assassination of JFK, Who Killed JFK, is a #1 podcast in the country right now. So that's been very exciting. So we just, we're very small but mighty is how we like to think about ourselves.
There you go. And finally, let's close where we began, talking about the affirmative action document. You tell folk again where they can see and download that brilliant piece of work.
Yeah, you absolutely can take a look at that documentary on the CBS News, their streaming service. It's a really great way to catch it, and we'd be very excited if everyone gets a chance to look at it there.
Her name is Soledad O'Brien. She's doing some wonderful work, consistent with all that she's done in the decades prior to. Soledad, good to have you on. I'm as we say, I'm rooting for everybody black. That includes you, obviously. I'm glad you're doing what you want to do and doing it in a way that is that's full of integrity. So congratulations on all the great work you're doing, and good to have you on this program.
Thanks for having me.
Take care, Soledad. That's our program for today. Tomorrow, Friday. Is it Friday already, Miles? Friday tomorrow. So tomorrow, the best of Tavis Smiley, in case you missed some amazing conversations this week. And there were plenty to choose from. Miles and I have to always, on Thursday, figure out what's our best of tomorrow. So we got a lot to choose from this week. So tomorrow, great show on that. If you are in Los Angeles, if you're in L.A., we heard across the country, but if you're in L.A., Friday morning, 10:30 a.m., at the top of Kenneth Hahn Park, our big announcement, our historic announcement about this major climate justice campaign that we're rolling out tomorrow with the mayor and Holly Mitchell and others. So it should be a great gathering tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. at the top of Kenneth Hahn Park at the MLK Memorial Tree Grove. That's tomorrow once again at 10:30 a.m. if you are in the Los Angeles area. Until tomorrow, thanks for tuning in, and as always, keep the faith.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Mike Moore. Here's the latest from the Black Information Network. A North Carolina man who was wrongfully accused of a rape is going to receive a massive settlement. Ronnie Long spent more than 4 decades in prison before his conviction was overturned in 2020. One of his attorneys revealed this week that the African-American man will receive at least $25 million from the North Carolina State Bureau of Investigation and the City of Concord as part of a settlement in a civil suit. We're now learning the TSA has set a new record when it comes to finding guns in carry-on bags. 2 of the top 5 airports for gun seizures were in Texas. Dallas and Houston were behind only Atlanta when it came to arrests. More than 9 out of 10 of the guns seized were loaded. And that's the latest. I'm Mike Moore from your 24/7 news source, the Black Information Network and BINnews.com.
Did you know Discover wants everyone to feel special? That's why with your Discover card, you have access to 24/7 customer service, as well as $0 fraud liability, which means you're never held responsible for unauthorized